Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to tit-bits on business and finance with me. India's forex reserves crossed $500 billion on 12th of June and they touched a figure of $501.7 billion. At that sum, we now have the third highest forex reserves for any nation in the world. Those ahead of us are China and Japan, and they are mightily ahead of us. China has forex reserves of $3.1 trillion and Japan is a second at $1.3 trillion. India is a third at $501.7 billion. The point to note here is, while the forex reserves of Japan and China have been built largely out of surpluses arising out of their trade, in other words, their exports have exceeded their imports by leaps and bounds. Our forex reserves primarily consist of borrowed funds. Thus, we may be the third largest in the world, but there is a huge difference between the kind of reserve that we have and those that are with China and Japan. Our journey to crossing $500 billion has been a long one. India has always had a foreign exchange deficiency, a deficit, right since independence. Our position started getting grimmer and worse from 1985, and in January 1991, our forex reserves touched a mere $1.2 billion. They fell to just $600 million in June 1991, which was equal to just about 3 weeks of India's essential imports. And that's what caused the crisis of 1991. India had to pledge its gold, raise money, raise dollars in order to ensure that it does not default on its payments. There is no sovereign default. That was 1991. It led to reforms, and because of that, international interest in India shot up. International investor interest went up such that in December 2003, we had forex reserves exceeding $100 billion. In 2008, they touched $310 billion, but they fell to $292 billion sometime in 2013, and thereafter they have gone up consistently. Just between September 2019 to now, India's forex reserves have gone up by $79 billion. And between the time that the lockdown started to now, which is 20th March 2020 to 5th of June, the forex reserves have gone up by $31.8 billion. We'll come to it later. Why did they go up? But at the moment, let's see in what capacity or in what composition are those forex reserves at the moment. Out of the total of $500 billion, $463 billion are by way of what we call foreign currency assets, investments in securities of other governments, deposits with banks, deposits with other foreign banks, etc. And $32.5 billion is by way of gold reserves. And how have these reserves been deployed? The Reserve Bank of India is the custodian and manager of India's forex reserves, and it deploys these reserves as per a policy framework which is set between the RBI and the Government of India. And pursuant to that, 64% of our reserves have been deployed in treasury bills, primarily of the US government. Thus, India has invested more than $300 billion in American government treasury bonds. 28% of our reserves are deployed by way of deposits given to central banks of other countries. 7.4% of the reserves are deposits made by the RBI with commercial banks abroad. And the point to note here is we get less than 1% return on all these deployments of our forex reserves. That's a minuscule return on the huge treasury of $500 billion which belongs to the Government of India. Why did the reserves shoot up of late? The reserves have shot up of late because of an inflow by way of foreign direct investment. The foreign portfolio investors who had run away from the Indian markets in Jan, Feb and March, they've come back, and about $3 billion has come in recent times because of FPI investments. Oil prices have gone down globally. India's imports have gone down. India's tourist remittances and other remittances have gone down by 61%. And because of that, the forex reserves of the country have shot up. The interesting issue here is that despite Moody's downgrading India's sovereign rating, we have still had a massive inflow of foreign exchange into the country. In the week ended 5th of June alone, India received about $8.22 billion by way of foreign currency, and that was because of Reliance Jio, Airtel, and Kotak raising funds abroad. Thus, India's forex reserves have gone up substantially even in times of the COVID lockdown. The question is, why do we need such huge foreign exchange reserves? The first reason is India needs foreign currency for way of imports. For imports, we need foreign exchange because international trade is mostly designated in dollars, and thus we need dollars. At the moment, with our reserves exceeding $500 billion, we have enough money to cover 12 months of imports, which is a substantial cushion that we have in our import payments. We also need foreign exchange reserves to maintain stability of the rupee. We need dollars in order to ensure that the rupee's value is maintained at a stable level, and that also helps to maintain external stability in respect of India's loans taken, given, remittances inside and outside. A healthy foreign exchange reserve for a country gives a lot of comfort to international investors and lenders, and it certainly provides a huge buffer to prevent any kind of a downgrade on the country's sovereign rating. The Reserve Bank of India keeps mopping up the inflow of dollars. It does not let them enter the market, and that's the reason why the reserves keep going up. Because if the Reserve Bank did not mop it up, the foreign currency would have come into the country, the markets would have absorbed it. India's rupee also would have been designated against the dollar as per market denominations. But the Reserve Bank does not let that happen. The Reserve Bank maintains the value of the rupee against the dollar in the manner it wants to do, and thus it keeps mopping up all the inflow of dollars. A point to note here is that because of these kind of massive inflows, the rupee should have gone up against the dollar, but it has not gone up in recent times. That's quite against conventional economic theory and thinking. According to us, one of the reasons is that the Reserve Bank prefers a weak rupee to help the exporter lobby, and a weakening rupee also it means that the Reserve Bank earns more and more profits on its foreign exchange reserves, and that means the RBI has a bigger surplus. It means that the government demands a bigger dividend from the Reserve Bank of India. That is also another reason why the Reserve Bank of India lets the rupee remain at a weak rate, despite the fact that at the moment, because of such inflows, the rupee should have appreciated against the dollar. The larger picture here, or the two key issues which are interrelated with emerge here are: the first one, when we earn less than 1% by way of a return on investment of these gigantic reserves that we have, then why do we still deploy it in the manner that we've done? At the moment, in international markets, interest rates are near zero. Why do we need to deploy it there? Why don't we use these reserves for investing, for example, to set up India's infrastructure, where we have a huge investment deficit and a huge backlog in infrastructure in the country? Why do we let them just remain stagnant and give us such a paltry return? The reason lies, or the answer lies in the fact that the Reserve Bank thinks, and of course the government also thinks in the process, that we have still not reached adequate levels of forex reserves. And why does the Reserve Bank say that? Bimal Jalan Committee in its report in August 2019 very rightly pointed out that it is not just imports that are covered by the reserves. The reserves are needed also to cover India's payments towards external debt and external liabilities. And when you look at those figures, you will realize that India's forex reserves, even at $500 billion plus, are certainly not enough. And that is very clear in the figures that emerge. In 2008, India's forex reserves stood at $310 billion. That year, India's external debt stood at $224 billion. In other words, if the need arose, India had enough foreign exchange in order to repay its entire external debt. The position is the reverse in 2020. In 2020, at this moment, our forex reserves exceed $500 billion, but our external debt is even more. Our external debt today stands at $563.5 billion. In other words, our foreign exchange reserves are not enough to repay our external debt, and that's what is the reason why Reserve Bank of India will need to keep mopping up dollars from the market. Thus, according to us, till India's forex reserves do not exceed its external debt, and till the time we do not come to a situation where we are starting to build up a surplus in our forex reserves because our exports exceed our imports, which is just not at the moment. Till such point of time, according to us, the Reserve Bank of India will need to keep mopping up dollars from the market. It will need to keep building up India's foreign exchange reserves. It is only when we become a nation like China or Japan, where our surplus or our forex reserves is because of a trade surplus, when we might see that the Reserve Bank lets the rupee and the dollar determine their own levels based on market conditions. Until then, expect the Reserve Bank to keep mopping up dollars and to keep building up India's forex reserves in that manner. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
हमारे घरों में भी बच्चे होते हैं जो हमसे प्यार दुलार की आस करते हैं।
हमारा भी जीवन साथी है जिसको हमारे ड्यूटी से घर आने का इंतजार होता है।
हमारे घर में भी एक बूढ़ी माँ है जिनके लिए आज भी हम ही आंखों के तारे हैं।
लेकिन हम हमारे घरों में नहीं हैं। आपकी सुरक्षा में कोई कसर न रहे, इसलिए हम अपने प्रियजनों से दूर हैं।
हम में से ही कुछ तो अब इतने दूर जा चुके हैं कि वो वापस अपने घरों को लौट भी नहीं पाएंगे।
हमें गर्व है कि हमारे कंधों पे मुंबई शहर के नागरिकों की सुरक्षा की जिम्मेदारी है। हमारे जज्बे और बलिदान को व्यर्थ न जाने दे। इस संकट के समय में आप घर पे रहे, सुरक्षित रहे।
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.
If you like this video, please share it, and we would love to hear your comments in the comments section down here. Also, please do like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter to get minute-to-minute news updates. For more such shows and videos, well, subscribe to our YouTube channel.